Thank you very much for joining us here on ET Now. This is Business at 9 and I'm Nivedna Prabhu. Our top focus for the evening. DGCA conducted comprehensive surveillance at major airports. This is including Delhi and Mumbai. In fact, the focus was on safety measures and regulatory compliance. Sameer Dikshit brings us the details.
Yes, post the tragic aircraft crash incident in Ahmedabad, DGCA, the aviation regulator, is not just carrying out tough scrutiny of the airline, but also of the airports. What we are picking up from the officials that DGCA carried out intense surprise audit of the major airports across the country. So, for example, of Chennai Airport, Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore. So these all airports, a safety audit was done by the DGCA, and shockingly, there were multiple safety violations that was found by the safety inspectors, by the DGCA officials. For example, at one of the airports, the central line of the runway, it was faded. Now, this central line actually helps the pilot to guide the aircraft properly, and this central line was faded. In another instance, at one of the places, DGCA officials found that the simulator which is used to train the pilot, they were running on outdated software. Now you can imagine that pilot training, that too on an outdated software of a simulator, that means that is raising a severe risk as well. Additionally, at multiple airports, DGCA officials found that the aircraft maintenance engineers, they were not following the mandatory safety protocols at a few places, at few airports. Even they were not able to follow the protocols, the safety protocols, how to actually maintain the aircraft, that manual or the guidelines, they were unable to follow it. Even in one of the cases, very shockingly, a domestic aircraft was supposed to take off with a worn tire. The tire was actually not in a very serviceable condition, and because of which DGCA officials, they stopped that particular flight, and it led to the delay of that domestic flight. But it was put into service only after that particular tire was replaced. Now just imagine that how many safety lapses are there which has been found out by the DGCA official in their surprise safety audit. Now these operators, they have been given a 7-day timeline to initiate the corrective action. In addition to this, they have also been asked to submit a CAP, a corrective action plan, whatever the it has been asked by DGCA, and this corrective action plan has to be submitted to DGCA. And not just this, going forward, DGCA will conduct this sort of surprise safety audit in coming months or days, and if these violations are found once again, then these airport operators may attract financial penalties, and also this can result to the cancellation of the license as well. But definitely that's a very shocking or the surprising part, that there are multiple safety violations at these airports, which has been highlighted by the DGCA in its safety audit report.
All right, Sameer Dikshit, my colleague, drawing that into perspective, and clearly shocking details that have come to the forefront as far as that glaring lapses is concerned. So there's lots to discuss on that front. But before we get into all those other aspects, let me take the opportunity to introduce our guests joining us this evening. Captain Meenu Vadia, founder, president, Federation of Indian Pilots, as well as Captain Sanjay Karve, aviation expert and analyst. Good evening to the both of you. Thank you very much for taking the time out and joining us here this evening. Clearly a lot of lapses that have come to the forefront, unbelievable to be saying the least. Having said that, before I come across to the both of you, let's put this into perspective for our viewers tonight. What are the charges? There are 10 of them. Of course, Sameer helped us draw that into perspective, but let's put that into detail. Charge number 1 being multiple cases of defects reappearing on the aircraft. Charge number 2, ineffective monitoring and inadequate rectification action. That's the charge number 2 that we are looking at, viewers. Very important for you to be looking at what has been coming out of that particular report. Let's look at charge number 3. It is the ground handling equipment that was found unserviceable. That is what is important to note, that the ground handling equipment here was found unserviceable during these particular checks. Let's take you through order of charge number 4, where the work order was not followed during aircraft maintenance. So another lapse that has come to the forefront. Let's also take you through charge number 5, where the AME not attending to the snag rectification. So another loophole that has been found as far as charge number 5 is concerned. Let's show you what charge number 5 is looking like to our viewers in terms of how the AME is not attending to the snag rectification. Let's quickly also put into perspective what charge number 6 is looking like. Again, a very big lapse where defect reports were not recorded in the technical logbook. So that says a lot about the given situation. Let's also tell you charge number 7, which is absolutely shocking to say the least. It talks about how life vests were not properly secured beneath the seats. While we speak about more charges that have come to the forefront, let's put charge number 8 into perspective that's been found. The center line marking of runway found faded. This is yet another lapse that has come to the forefront. More importantly, we're talking about how these checks were happening at some of the busiest airports across the country. So let's put charge number 8 on our screens as far as how the center line marking of the runway was found faded. That's right. Let's also tell our viewers tonight what charge number 9 was looking like. This is simulator not matching with aircraft configuration. What would that mean? Technically, who's responsible if something were to happen mid-air? So many questions on that front. And charge number 10, yet another shocking lapse that has been found, which Sameer, my colleague, was also pointing out about how one domestic flight was cancelled due to worn out tires. So clearly many questions that has to be asked tonight. More importantly, who's responsible for this as well? What is the ecosystem that is currently present in front of us? Having said that, while we of course have just told you about the 10 grave charges that have come to the forefront, gentlemen, thank you very much for being patient. While we, of course, took you through those grave charges as well, Sanjay Karve, let me come to you first. What do you make of this? And more importantly, what does that say about the standard of Indian aviation as a whole?
In a typical Indian fashion, I would say this is that chalta hai attitude. So as long as you are not caught, you can do whatever you want to do and get away. In fact, there's one more observation which the DGCA has brought out, saying that the obstructions around the airport for last 3 years, they have not been identified or marked, which is again a very serious issue. All the charges they have put are all levelment charges. That means in next 7 days, you need to take corrective action. Not logging a defect is a very serious thing, which the airline must answer. Similarly, having repeated defects is very clearly laid down by DGCA. If you have a repeated defect of the same nature, you are required to inform to the regulator, who eventually takes it up with the OEM for a corrective action. Now, here, the airline cannot wash its hands saying, okay, we carried out rectification and things worked. The aviation ecosystem is one of the few ecosystems in the world which is so well documented that it does not give you any chance of error. If you have to make an error, that means you have taken efforts to make an error. A simple work order, it lists out how a defect rectification is to be carried out, which manual is to be referred to, which chapter, which paragraph, what is the manpower required, what are the spares required, what are the tools required. It gives you in detail. And every individual who follows that is required to sign it saying, I have followed this manual, which eventually the aircraft maintenance engineer also signs it off, saying that yes, the defect rectification was carried out as per the laid down manual. And I find that everything is in order. And now I am clearing this aircraft. So unless and until someone is very casual about it, you cannot miss a step. The procedure for a work order is so well laid out. It is one of the most safest ecosystem which has ever been built in any system, be it in air, be it in ground, or be it in shipping. So it just shows a certain amount of casualness. AME not attending rectification, not heard of. If that means the AME is just signing on what the technicians have done, the AME is required to check, confirm that the work has been carried out as per the standards laid down by the DGCA and the manufacturer.
It is a chalta hai attitude. And unfortunately, we might look at unfortunate incidents as well transpire. But while you speak about that, let me also get in Captain Meenu Wadia. Captain Meenu, given the fact that, how this has also been put into perspective about that lackadaisical attitude, but doesn't it expose a bigger rotten system? This is not just about a technical aspect, also an ethical one. Who's
You are
responsible?
pointing out only a very, very small percentage of the problem. The problem is far, far greater than you have made out to be. First of all, when you say DGCA is doing these audits and etc., who in DGCA is doing it? First of all, DGCA has been filled up with your bureaucrats. You do not require bureaucrats to do these things. They have some pilots who are inspectors, but even the pilots have to be trained in accident analysis to be aware of various things to be done to prevent accidents. Let me point out just a few things there. I can point out 100 items and you'll be sitting with me for the next 10 days on this channel. But let me just point out the major thing that's why this last aircraft crash was because the buildings were in the vicinity of the airport. That is the tires being worn out. These are minor things. Of course, they have to be addressed. But the major things like the buildings around the airports, which had to be removed many years back, are still there. In fact, why blame someone else? Your own airport authority in Bombay had a control tower which was infringing ICAO standards. And therefore, the government ordered what they call the high-level technical team. And I was on that committee and we had recommended it to be fully demolished, etc. To the best of my knowledge, the tower has been demolished. But we had also recommended the building to be demolished. To the best of my knowledge, it is still existing. So the problem is within, not without. You have to address the problems from within first. Secondly, the lines which you so graciously mentioned, the center line was faded. Hello, it's not only a center line being faded, there are many lines which are important for preventing accidents and incidents. They don't exist on various taxi tracks. I have pointed out some aircraft which have had incidents which could have resulted in major accidents, which when brought out to the knowledge of the airport authority, it was taken very casually and the matter was glossed over. So we take all these things as the other promoter
Captain
said
Meenu,
rightly.
when you point that out, of course, you're talking about the charge number 8, where the center line marking of the runway found faded. And of course, you're helping us draw that into a better perspective from that particular prism. But of course, we're also talking about the aspect that this charge has also been leveled at some of India's busiest airports. Having said that, coming back to you, Captain Sanjay Karve, given the fact that you spoke about the lackadaisical approach as well, the other aspect is, are India's airline CEO, running a safety-first operation or a schedule-first profit-maximizing one? Ultimately, it's just business. Really doesn't matter what is going at the back end.
Yeah, rightly pointed out, we have got into an ecosystem where it is the balance sheet which matters at the end of the day. Airlines take pride in saying, look, I'm only one of the few airlines in the world which is making profit. If you look at an airline, if you're traveling in any of the aircraft or in any of the sector, the standard announcement at end of your flight is, we have reached 10 minutes before schedule. And to ensure that we leave on time, please clean the aircraft, please take all your belongings. Basically, the catchword has become on-time performance and minimum turnaround time. Now, you cannot have a minimum turnaround when it comes to safety. Obviously, if you're cutting down on the minimum turnaround time, what is going to get left off? Certain things, like you're flying over land, someone would assume, oh, I don't require a May vest, I don't require a life vest. It's okay. I am flying from Delhi to Mumbai. Unlikely I am going to require that life vest. This is where corner cutting starts. And once this attitude seeps in, it is very difficult to remove this attitude. We have to sit down and rationally work out what is the minimum turnaround time required, keeping safety in mind. What we are doing is we are working on the minimum turnaround time. If possible, include safety in that. We want to have as many flights as possible on a single aircraft in a day by reducing the turnaround time. All of us are following the Air Deccan formula, which had 20 or 25 minutes turnaround time, not realizing when they started off, they were flying an ATR. They started off with the ATR 42. With the ATR 42, it was possible 25 minutes turnaround. Today, aircraft are parked. There are people, 180, 190 passengers on board. Can you really turn around an aircraft in 25 and 30 minutes? You need to ask this question to yourself before gloating over it.
Absolutely, Captain Sanjay Karve, as you point that out, given many questions, of course, that has to be asked within the ecosystem, while, of course, flyers also will be awaiting that, because at the, ultimately, if you look at it in the other aspect, when flyers also are compiled to certain rules, like if you don't reach your boarding gate at a particular time, you are fined for it. If you have extra luggage, you're fined for it. So when it's the other way around, when there's accountability in question, it really talks about, who's going to be responsible. But having said that, let me also take that point back to Captain Meenu Wadia. Captain Meenu, given the fact that in India, given the way that we're looking at this more often than not, normalize cutting corners, especially in situations like this, where there's a knee-jerk reaction, then there's a report that has to be submitted within 7 days. We're reacting after everything is done, not really proactive.
Absolutely right. But you are today focusing only on very minor, these are comparatively minor issues. There are many major issues. You've been reading in the press today, these days, that the DGCA went and did an audit of Air India and they suspended 3 senior officers because they were not following the duty time limitations. By the way, DGCA themselves are responsible for this lapse because they have condoned this from the airlines time and again. If a pilot ever pointed out that the safety was compromised, he was sacked with the connivance, with the blessings of the DGCA. So there are many major issues. Like we have been involved with aviation safety in this country for more than 50 years. And I've been focusing, hardly anyone is prepared to listen. That is why I first asked you, when you talk of DGCA, who in DGCA is doing this inquiry? And if you talk of the airport audits, let me tell you, a few years back, we asked the DGCA to let a pilot be represented because every year the airport audit is required to be done. So we said, let a pilot be there on the audit so we can suggest better changes. They said, no, we have an Air India representative. Eventually, I went and found out who was Air India's representative. In the same building, in the accounts office, there was an accounts clerk. They asked them to come there and sign the papers. That was the Air India representative. So, as you said, lack of attitude. The whole issue is put under the carpet, and the whole issue, in a very major factor, requires to be addressed, and right from the bottom to the top. The whole restructuring of the DGCA is required.
All right, fair enough. And as you put that into perspective, what you did say initially while pointing this out in terms of when it's been flagged earlier from a pilot's perspective, and that's something I'm sure our viewers would also want to know. Are they silenced? Is the ecosystem, becoming that way where you cannot be checking the own system? Because at the end of the day, you're also gambling with lives in midair. Captain Meenu, that is back to you.
Yes, of course, you're gambling with the lives since a long time. And that is why our safety record, when you say it's not an opinion, if I'm expressing that Air India or India's safety record is good or bad, it's not my opinion. There are statistics which have been worked out by the Flight Safety Foundation. And the world accident rate is 1.5 hull losses per million departures. Right. Well-informed countries like Europe and Japan, Australia, 0.5, 0.6. India's, I don't even want to mention. I know about it. I don't want to mention it. Frighten you and all your people who are listening to this channel. It is horrendous. It definitely requires a lot of redevelopment and addressing. And therefore, you require quality trained pilots, not just any pilots who are trained in accident analysis. Okay, if you want me to tell you how DGCA has obstructed this very process also, I'll tell you. First of all, in India, there's hardly anyone who's trained in accident analysis to start with. Many years back, I wanted to get people to be trained over here. And since there was no one, and the rate was very high, even long back, it was more than $9,000 per week. So hardly anyone could afford it. So I had got ICAO to send a team to India. Now, ICAO interacts with only the government. It didn't interact with individuals or my organization. So they interacted with DGCA and told them we are sending the team for a week. I informed the DGCA, this is what I have done. Please allow maximum number of pilots to attend this course. Do you know the DGCA went out of his way to ensure that not a single pilot was allowed to attend this course, which is absolutely essential. So this is the attitude of the DGCA. And when they say we are doing the audit and we are doing this, I have no faith in them.
as you point that out, of course, to even come to terms with what you put into perspective is once again, shocking. But having said that, Captain Sanjay, coming back to you, given what we heard also Captain Meenu say, at the end of the day, it's also seeming like that while the DGCA, of course, has been looking at this and these are glaring lapses, it's time for them to self-regulate, because look at who decides worn out tires were good enough until a flight had to be cancelled, or given the fact that we were talking about how the simulator was not matching with the aircraft configuration, given the fact that who's responsible if something happens midway, the other being that life vests were not properly secured beneath the seats.
Want me to answer that? Is it for Sanjay or for me?
Captain Sanjay, that was for you. If you could hear me, please go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
See, all these are DGCA is just a small cog in this entire wheel. Like Captain Meenu pointed out, there's a systematic failure in India. There are too many agencies involved, and every agency is keen on passing the buck to the other one. To give you a very simple example, obstructions around the airport. If you go through the Mumbai newspapers, there are plenty of advertisements of multi-storied buildings coming up around New Mumbai, and the tagline is, watch a takeoff and landing of an aircraft 24/7. I really don't know in another 5 years' time what is going to be the situation around New Mumbai airport. It is again going to be same like Mumbai, all high-rise buildings around it. There are regulations laid down as to what should be the distance, what should be the height. Shouldn't someone enforce it? The airports authority, the government, the DGCA, the collector of that particular district, everyone is responsible. Let's not just hold one person accountable. All these people are responsible. Similarly, tires. Now we are looking at the balance sheet. You want to push as much as possible. Okay. Can it do one more landing? Can it withstand another 2 landings? Okay. If it has withstood 1 landing, it can withstand 1 more landing. We are in monsoons. In monsoons, a ball tire or a worn-out tire is a very dangerous.
Right, Captain Sanjay. In fact, as you pointed out, there are many other questions also. Perhaps should shareholders and investors also ask, are we profiting off a system or one slip away from yet another unfortunate disaster? But I'm afraid I'd have to interject you there because we're short of time. But thank you very much, Captain Meenu Wadia, as well as Captain Sanjay Karve, for joining us here this evening on ET Now, sharing with us your perspective, and of course many questions that still remain unanswered. Only time's going to reveal if that system is going to be checked that way. Having said that,